The integration of schema therapy with DBT is where we really begin to disassemble those stories that we've been telling ourselves for what may seem like most of our lives. The primal goal behind everything we do at the Liberation Place is to support people in living the life they want to live. What this basically entails is helping people to figure out the areas of life that are important for them to focus on, establishing what it means to be the person they want to be in those areas of life, then supporting them with putting things into place to take the actions they need to take to be that way in those important areas. Sounds really simple, right? Well, theoretically it is. If we live according to our true core values and beliefs, being the person that we want to be in those areas of life that are important to us, then we can live the life we want to live right now. It's not about the things we have, the places we are, or the things that we achieve. It's about how we're behaving in everyday life. It's about who we want to be. Clearly, putting this way of life into practice takes hard work and effort. It means looking beyond the instant gratification of external reward and building internal motivation to keep going in the direction that we really want to go. While living the life I want to live is a simple thing to talk about, actually living this way is a completely different thing to do. The reason for this difficulty is due to the simple fact that when we actually try to live our lives according to our true core values and beliefs in those areas of life that hold the most meaning to us, there's something that gets in the way. And that something is what we call our early childhood maladaptive schema. Schema therapy was developed by Dr. Jeffrey Young, and in it, he hypothesizes that psychological schemas are like blueprints for the way we see the world. In his extensive research, he discovered that we create most of our schemas as children, and once they're in place, they hold the contextual information for the stories that we then generate about all of our lives. Most, if not all, of these stories are based on an accumulation of information from our actual childhood experiences. This information is usually based on specific facts about the things that happened when we were growing up. At the same time, it's important to note that sometimes our stories can be slightly skewed by a child's perception of the way things were during this vulnerable and impressionable time of our lives, which can change our understanding of what actually happened. In general, if most of our childhood experiences were positive, then we develop a positive set of stories about ourselves, the world, and the people around us. If our experiences were not so positive and sometimes even negative, then we can develop a set of stories that filter our perception of who we are and what life is all about in a very detrimental way. These stories then become the lens through which we experience the world around us, and they continue to shape how we respond to situations throughout our adult lives. Basically, schemas are the contextual framework from which the content of our own unique individual stories about the past are built upon. From the perspective of the work we do at the Liberation Place, the most important thing to understand about schemas is that actually removing a particular story about the past is an extremely difficult thing to do. However, changing the rigidity that's attached to the schema being fact in every situation that we experience right now is extremely achievable. Schema therapy teaches us that because of the nature or temperament that we were born with and the childhood experiences that we had, at the core of our personality system, we develop a vulnerable child. This important part of our personality is at the core of all of the fear that we hold on to, and because of this fear, the vulnerable child gets pushed into the shadows of our thoughts and feelings, hidden from the world because of what might happen if it's exposed for everyone to see. Our personality system is then set up to defend this vulnerable child whenever its emotional experience gets activated, and depending on the level of vulnerability that this child holds onto, that activation can occur once a week, once a month, or even multiple times in a single day. Our lack of awareness for the parts of our personality that we're often desperately trying to protect causes us to blend with the thoughts and feelings that they bring into our system. As a result, we start reacting to situations that are happening right now because of the way they remind us of the past. These protective behaviours often get characterised as who we are, when instead they are simply automatic learned behaviour patterns designed to keep us safe safe from the things that we really fear. Our childhood experiences and the stories we created as a result also play a significant role in the development of what's known as our attachment style. This self-generated way of connecting with other people, which revolves around those previously mentioned set of stories that we produced in early childhood, activates the parts of our personality that take over in an attempt to cope with the emotions that are triggered by our childhood reenactments. These reenactments either conform with the behaviours we used as children because they're the right way to deal with our feelings, or they're a huge pushback against the old stories in a struggle to desperately escape from the life we now find ourselves completely trapped in. The biggest problem with our childhood reenactments is that they usually play out at a subconscious level, where most of us are generally completely unaware of them. Consequently, we continue to blend with our parts and the behaviours they use to cope with an emotion that's being triggered right now, but one that's usually tied to an old familiar story. This is why I believe as adults we are constantly living into our past, and rarely do we experience what's happening in the present moment without the baggage we're holding on to from our most formative years. These reactions are behaviour patterns that in schema therapy we refer to as modes, and while we have a multitude of healthy and effective modes, in other words, those parts of our personality that do those healthy and effective things, we also have many unhealthy and ineffective modes that, much to our dismay, take us into behavioural places that reenact old behaviour patterns. Coincidentally, these are the behaviours through building self-awareness we're currently trying to change. This is why in a schema therapy approach, it's really important to know what our dominant schemas are, mainly so we can recognise the filters that are influencing the way we see the world when they're present in our system. When we look at our own unique stories, we often notice that there are multiple schemas that we identify with, and in any situation they can cascade into each other, flipping back and forth as the information being filtered into our mind fuels the stories that are associated with each other. Knowing the dominant schema gives us the information we need to release the burden that's being carried by our vulnerable child, and without this knowledge we're usually unable to release the vulnerability from within our personality system. Depending on when you're watching this video, either over the next few weeks or if you take a look around the YouTube channel, you're going to find a whole bunch of different videos that contain information about the more common schema that I come across in my private practice and in the work I do with myself. Each video is attached to a website page that contains a worksheet that's designed to help you identify the stories you might be holding on to inside of its own particular contextual framework. Now, if you've got an opinion on this or anything else to do with the integration of DBT and schema therapy, please leave a comment in the chat. I'd love to hear your point of view. If you want to know more, come join the live online meetings that I facilitate each week on Zoom. I'll leave some links to those groups in the description below. And as always, if you like the content of this video, please subscribe to the channel, smash that like button and turn on those notifications to get all the latest from me and the Liberation Place. I hope this video gave you some ideas on how schema therapy might be something that you want to know more about. Thanks for watching, see you again soon, take care, be safe and be well.